Hey guys, how's it going and welcome back. So how much RAM in your computer do you need and how much hard drive space do you need for storing all your wonderful programs, including your operating system? Well, that kind of depends on what kind of user you are. So let's say you're a lightweight user. So lightweight users, they surf the internet, they stream Netflix perhaps, do a little bit of video editing, a little bit of picture editing, not do anything really intense, and you're really not playing like, AAA title games. You're playing some games, but nothing too, majorly intensive, right? Well, a lot of people would like to tell you that 8 gigs is more than enough. I say they're wrong. And I'll tell you why. Because your computer is not even going to wake up from its nap until you at least get 16 gigs of RAM in it. And that is pretty factual. In my experience over, since 1981 I started in computers, and being a technician since 1990, and of course that was with Apple, and then PC Tech since 93, plus my own personal computers and experience over the years with various operating systems, both in the Macintosh platform as well in the Windows world. I can tell you for a fact that 8 gigs, especially nowadays, is utterly useless. Okay? So I'm going to give you some numbers for you Mac people out there like myself. So running an operating system like Mac OS Catalina, for example, which is still being supported until at least this coming summer or fall of 2022. For Catalina users, according to the activity monitor, just with the OS running on these machines, nothing else, just the OS, we're looking at 3.5 gigabytes of memory being used just for Catalina. Now, I do have 16 gigs of RAM in this machine, so I'm not going to run out anytime soon. Okay, now, as for running Big Sur, which I have on another computer here, that would be 2.31 gigabytes of memory used, which is actually quite amazing because Big Sur is much newer than Catalina, and of course is on a wide spread of machines from Intel to M1 processors on the Mac side. Pretty interesting, I must say. So on my Mac Mini, which is my newest computer that I have from Apple, I'm running OS Monterey, as I like to nickname it, cheddar cheese. It uses 4.51 gigabytes of RAM just to fire up the operating system. You're still not doing anything on these computers yet. When you start running programs, now granted a lot of programs don't use a lot of RAM, and you can still have a couple of programs going at the same time and not have to worry about running out of that 8 gig space. But it's when you start doing stuff with those programs, like Google Chrome, for example. If I fire up Chrome on my Mac Mini, okay, just the browser with 3 tabs open, I'm now chewing about let it settle down first, I guess. 5.59 gigs of 6 gigs. Okay, it's almost done loading itself. Chrome has a lot of counterparts that it actually loads up other than the main app. And you can see in your activity window all that amount of RAM that it actually uses. So it looks like it's pretty well settled out. So we're at about 6 gigabytes of RAM is now between the operating system and Google Chrome alone. That's a lot of RAM if you only have 8 gigs of RAM in your computer. That means you only got 2 gigs left before you start page swapping to the hard drive for extra memory to run programs. That would not be cool. Now, although on a Mac Mini and the other M1 computers, Apple puts some really superbly fast SSD drives in these things, so you're really not going to notice a performance hit when you start page swapping. But, and there is a but to this, it's going to terrorize your hard drive and burn it out sooner. If I'm given the choice between having a hard drive last me for 10 or 15 years versus maybe 3 years or 5 years, I think I'm going to take the original and go for the 10 to 15 year program, which means the only way to avoid that page swapping area is actually more RAM. The other thing is your computer, like I said, it doesn't wake up with 8 gigs of RAM. It wakes up with more. Okay, and sometimes even just an OS update is going to chew a little bit more RAM out of your computer. and rightly so. But I have noticed even with the Mac Mini M1, for example, that even though I have 16 gigs of RAM in this thing, and I'm not going to run out, I have noticed that since the last update from Apple, I actually got a speed boost, which means these computers aren't even fully awake yet, even with Monterey on them, which is kind of strange because the M1s have been out for well over a year now, and you'd think they would be fully awakened, but apparently not. But they're getting there. So, and I did that in Cinebench test scoring to show you guys on other videos with the M1 and the before and the after on the benchmark of the multi-core alone, and I was like, wow, that's like a really good increase in performance with just that update. So let's talk about the PCs. Of course, your PC is going to be the exact same thing, running Windows 10 or running Windows 11. Now, Windows 11, again, it wants 4 gigs just to itself. Windows 10 should take a little bit less RAM, which I have no way of testing that for you guys right this second, but I do know that the requirements are a minimum of 4 gigs just for Windows 11. So out of an 8 gig machine that's not even awake yet, that doesn't leave you a lot of memory left over before virtual memory starts kicking in, aka page swapping, for those people who like that term, which is actually, as far as I'm concerned, incorrect. It's called virtual memory. It uses the hard drive for memory for your computer so that you can run multiple apps and not have to upgrade your RAM. But you do take a big performance hit, of course, when you start running virtual memory on a lot of computers, especially if you have a slower SSD drive or you're working with mechanical drive. Mechanicals are the worst drives on the planet, yet they still produce the stupid things. But anyways, let's move on with this. So I would say, even for the lightweights, bare minimum is 16 gigs of RAM, okay? Hard drive space for a lightweight, I would say half a terabyte, because 256 is kind of useless. As a prime example, on my Mac Mini, of course, I have this thing loaded for bear. I got more programs yet to put on it, but I do have some pretty getting into the hardcore games that I know I can run on it. I've got DaVinci Resolve 17, I've got Final Cut Pro, I've got GarageBand, I've got Logic Pro, which is a professional recording software from Apple. I have many other programs, and out of a half a terabyte, I've only used up 145.65 gigs, which is good. I got 384 gigs still left over out of that drive. Now that's not too shabby, but once you start filling your drive up with more and more programs, and if you keep your data on your drive, which is the worst thing you could ever do, but if you did, you would run out of that half a terabyte probably in a couple of years, right? But on the other side of the fence, keep your data backed up onto a dump drive and just install the programs you absolutely are going to use on your computer. And I think a half a terabyte at the minimum would be really good for you lightweights. Now, for us mid-tier level users who are light and mid-tier, like myself, a half a terabyte is actually pretty comfy zone for me, for the Mac at least. For a PC, a heck of a lot more, because my PC is a steroid on rockets computer, and it's great for hardcore gaming, and those hardcore games chew up a lot of hard drive space. Mind you, I do only have a half a terabyte in that thing, and I'm not running out yet, but I'm just starting to load more and more better games on it. So I may be looking at, probably in the spring, I'll be upgrading that internal drive on the motherboard, which right now is an NVMe GameTrix drive. I'm going to be upgrading that probably to about a 2 terabyte, is what I'm suspecting I'm going to need for that, because of the kind of games and other programs I do run on that. But for what I'm running on it now, and have been for the last 2 years, a half a terabyte has been fine, great for the lightweights. Mid-level though, yes, if you're going to be playing a lot of games, you're going to get more serious programs going. 16 gigs of RAM is still plenty of RAM. It's not an issue, okay? Especially if you're only running 1, maybe 2 programs at a time. But, the thing is, you shouldn't be running more than 1 or 2 at a time, no matter how much horsepower you have under the hood. Because the more programs you have open, fine, you got tons of RAM, baby. That's great. But if you do not have the processing power, which you won't, you start lagging. And this is where errors can happen. When you have too many programs open at once, no matter how fast your machine is, you're still chewing more and more and more and more out of that processor. Got lots of RAM, I can run 40 programs at once, but your processor's going, kind of thing, right? Like, give me a break, buddy, I can only do so much. And this is, of course, where you can get into thermal overheats as well on any computer system running too many programs at once, because you're making that processor work harder than what it needs to, which is why I always advise people, I don't care how fast your machine is or how much RAM you have in it, run one, no more than two at a time, and that's going to depend on the programs, and you're going to have to pick and choose. But when you're doing video editing, even on a PC, okay, you don't want to run more than just that video editor. And I'm going to explain why. Is because video editors, and you start putting those files in there, especially when you're doing like 1080p and 4K and 2K stuff or higher, you are choking that processor, and you want to run another program at the same time. Not necessarily a good plan, because that's where you can have glitches show up in your video. And that is something that's kind of unacceptable in the industry if you're a professional too. So for you guys that are mid-tiers, yeah, I would probably say in the mid-tier level, reasonably you should have at least a terabyte, okay, of hard drive space, and at least 16 to 32 gigs of RAM, depending on your purpose of the mid-tier level. In the high-tier level users, you guys should be having, of course, a lot of horsepower under the hood, hopefully. I would probably say at least a couple of terabytes, maybe 2 terabytes, 3 tops, for your internal storage. And then, of course, you're going to want at least 32 to 64 gigs of RAM. Now, if you do need more because of the kind of pro-level stuff you're doing, then okay. As long as that program is going to be able to make use of all that, you're not wasting money when it comes to RAM. You'll never waste money on hard drive space, though. That's the thing. Hard drive space is always a good thing. I know with my Mini, I went with the internal being a half a terabyte, and I know probably in about a year or two, it might start to, get from 384, maybe I'll be down to, maybe 184. But that's what external drives are for, and I can move a lot of my programs to external drives and, even run them very easily. And I always, always, always say to people, keep your important data, okay? Not your programs, your data onto a external dump drive source. This way it keeps all that data safe and secure. So at least if your OS completely goes la-la on you, you are not going to lose access to that data, especially in a severe, severe crash where it's unrecoverable. And as a Mac user, with Apple been soldering stuff onto the motherboards the last number of years, in a lot of our systems, some stuff they're leaving alone for now, like Mac Pro Towers and the iMac Pros. If you have a severe crash on a soldered-on SSD, you're not getting that stuff back. It's gone. So, it's one thing, lose your programs if something happens, but your data, man, that is some serious stuff. It is unrecoverable, right? And I had that mistake. I actually left everything on my internal for years, and I've never backed anything up. Well, I learned my lesson the hard way, especially on stuff that was not replaceable. That really sucked bad, okay? So, take some advice from an old-timer that's been at this for a long time. Keep your data on an external storage device, okay? Always. And when you're done backing it up, unless you need that data on a day-to-day basis, unplug the sucker and throw it in the drawer till the next time you need to stuff more junk on it, okay? And that's how I do things nowadays, and it works absolutely great for me that way. But anyways, so that's kind of where we're at between the beginners, the mid guys, and the high-ender guys as far as RAM and hard drive space goes. And I really hope this video helped you out. And also with a little bit of extra info, maybe you'll also think about backing your stuff up onto another dump drive source instead of leaving it all in one spot where it really shouldn't be. Anyways, thanks again, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.